Hi, I'm filmmaker Louise Lemoine from Becca Lemoine, and you're listening to U.S. Modernist Radio.
Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Oh, I don't care what Mama don't allow, gonna draw mine modern anyhow. Mama don't allow no architecture around here.
Welcome to U.S. Modernist Radio, where we talk and laugh with people who enjoy, own, create, dream about, preserve, love, and hate modernist architecture, the most exciting and controversial buildings in the world. Nowhere in the world celebrates modernism better than Modernism Week in Palm Springs, California, every February. This 11-day architecture and design festival hosts exciting modernist house tours, insightful lectures, designer shopping, architecture documentary premieres, eye-popping house parties, detailed exhibitions, and much more. And for almost 10 years, U.S. Modernist Radio has been your gateway to all the action, reporting from the U.S. Modernist Compound. That would be poolside at the hip Hotel Skylark, interviewing guests in the world of architecture and design. I'm Tom Guild. Over the spring and summer, we'll bring you these one-on-one interviews, plus special guests recorded right here in the studio. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by June Goldfinger and Jeff Taylor, sponsors of Circle Square Triangle, a traveling exhibition on the architecture of Myron Goldfinger, and by Diane Bald and the Budman family, restoring significant architecture in Palm Springs, Los Angeles, Malibu, and Toronto. Today, you'll hear from Kirsten Roech, the new executive director of Philip Johnson's Glass House in New Canaan, Connecticut. Then we'll take a ride down memory lane with Marina Coates, creator of the YouTube series Behind the Scenes, featuring tours of your favorite TV and movie houses. Finally, we'll spend a few minutes with multi-instrumentalist Andrea Carter. And now, thinking about how he might rent George Jetson's house one day, here's your host, Mr. Modernism, George Smart.
Thanks, Tom.
It's a cartoon, George.
Yes, I know. If you're a regular listener to the podcast, it's highly likely you have a favorite show or film that featured a modernist dwelling. There's Don Draper's apartment in Mad Men, Mike and Carol Brady's house in The Brady Bunch, and of course, the Jetsons, who live in a future we can only aspire to. These houses are sometimes better actors than the real actors. For example, the 2006 movie The Lake House, one of my favorites, which was the reunion of Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock after their success in Speed, that modernist house was the star of the show. We did a whole episode on it a few years ago. There's also the modernist house in Modern Family, John Lautner's Chemisphere house in the movie Body Double, and of course the Van Damme house from Alfred Hitchcock's North by Northwest, a movie that still holds up 60 years later. And then there's the movie Columbus, which has great coverage of all the modernist buildings in Columbus, Indiana, a place you should visit, but not much of a plot in the movie. Coming not so soon to screens everywhere is a movie about the Farnsworth House in Plano, Illinois. They've been working on that one for years, with many changes in script and cast. Want to go with U.S. Modernist to Palm Springs in February 2025 and stay with our crew at the U.S. Modernist Compound, a.k.a. the Hotel Skylark? Email me at george@usmodernist.org.
Kirsten Roech is the new executive director of Philip Johnson's iconic Glass House in New Canaan, Connecticut, a National Trust historic site. In her long career in historic preservation, she's managed more than $165 million in construction projects. And for more than 25 years, she served as Director of Capital Planning, Preservation, and Institutional Relations for the Park Avenue Armory, a Manhattan art and performance venue. George caught up with Kirsten at this year's Modernism Week, poolside at the U.S. Modernist Compound.
Kirsten, I understand that it was a twofer when you were hired in the Glass House, that you also brought your dog.
I did. I moved the whole house out from New Jersey, where I was living before, to Connecticut, and Piper, my dog, who's getting on in years. She's about 9 years old. I think during the acclimation period really wanted to be with me, so I just took her to the office. And certainly the days where I was out at the Glass House, that was the best. She just loved it out there.
Oh,
so,
I bet.
Room to run, and it's got all kinds of great smells. There's a lot of animals out on the property.
Really?
Yeah.
What kinds of animals?
Apparently bobcats, which I've never seen, but they're out there. Deer and huge amounts of turkeys, which are really good, I'm told, because they eat the ticks and such in the grasses. So we encourage the wildlife out there for sure.
Pheasants, maybe? Any pheasants running around?
I haven't seen any, but we do have a time lapse overnight of the pond, which is down at the bottom of the ravine. And you can see animals come to the water. It's like an African nature, safari nature film where you see the animals come in and drink, and then the deer leave, and then the next animal, whatever they are, little mammals and birds come in and out. And so I think that landscape and nature part of the glass house is fascinating and not explored enough.
Now, what did you do before taking this position?
So I was working at the Park Avenue Armory on the restoration of the Gilded Age landmark building, the interiors and exterior. There were rooms by Tiffany, Stanford White, Herder Brothers, other great late 19th century artists and architects, and it was a wonderfully fulfilling and incredibly treasured personal experience of mine. We had done the major rooms that were needing restoration and the exterior, and so I was looking for a next challenge. It also, all of that hit at the same time that both my kids were leaving for college.
Okay.
And so it seemed like an opportunity to make a change in my life and engage my creativity and I don't know, I'm really enthusiastic for this job, and I think that's a good thing to be at this time in my career, is starting something new.
And as we learned from your predecessor, Greg, when we interviewed him, you just have to be constantly problem solving with this campus.
Yes.
I mean, there's just so many aspects of it that have to be fixed and repaired and everything all the time.
Well, I think that is probably something that made me a good candidate for this position, is because I tick all the boxes. My background is in historic preservation. I've overseen major capital restoration projects. I have done fundraising. I have worked with boards. I've worked with artists, contemporary artists, on the challenges of mounting contemporary art in odd places that are not built for it.
Yeah.
And so all of that, I think, came together. I also started my career at the National Trust for Historic Preservation back in 1991, my first job out of college, giving tours of the Decatur House in Washington, D.C. as an art history major. That was where, I don't know, the romance and the excitement of historic preservation really got me, giving tours of that site. And I went from there directly into working in advocacy for landmarking historic buildings, and then eventually got my master's in historic preservation.
Your involvement with the Glass House was not your first. You visited it when Johnson was still living there.
When I was a child.
Yeah.
So I did grow up in New York City, and my mother's best friend had a house in Connecticut nearby, and at some point, I'm not saying he was there, he was not. It was just one of those chance things that somebody knew somebody, and we got to run around. But I was very little. But I could remember it because it is such a striking visual site, that house. It challenges everything you think a house is.
Absolutely.
And I think for children, especially, it sparks creativity and it challenges thinking. And I'm hoping to embrace that more with an expansion of the education programs we do there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, something I've always been curious about, the expression, people who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, did that originate with Johnson, or was that ahead of him in some way? Because I can't imagine a lot of glass houses existed before he came along.
I have no idea. But I have worked it into some of my passwords now that I'm at the Glass House.
Note to all hackers, if you want to get into her accounts. The Glass House is a series of buildings on the campus. The actual glass house itself is just one of those. And right across from that is a building that has been closed for quite a while and is under restoration. Tell me about that.
Yeah, the brick house actually was built at the same time as the glass house. In fact, it was finished just a few months before, and Johnson lived in it during the construction of the glass house. The two worked together as bookends, basically, of a small courtyard area. And one is completely transparent, and the other almost completely opaque. And this brick house has been closed since 2007, I believe, because of water damage. And so that's really right after the National Trust opened the site for visitation. It operated as a guest house. It also has a small library. And Johnson would use both sites. I mean, he did describe it as a place to go and read or watch TV, which you wouldn't do in the glass house.
Right, sure.
It's handy to have these other houses on the site. And so this restoration started in the fall, and it is wrapping up right now. It should be completed in April, and we open it on April 30th. We'll do a ribbon cutting. It opens for tours on May 3rd. So we are already selling tickets, and people are excited. I think it's just one opportunity to bring repeat visitors back. I think that the arts that we feature each year on the site, the lectures that we do, the performances that we do are all very exciting. But I think that this is a moment in this year, 2024, which is the 75th anniversary of the Glass House. Mm-hmm. I think that opening of the Brick House is going to be really a game changer.
And each summer, you have a wonderful event I've been to several times called the Summer Party or the Garden Party, which is, the first or second weekend
It's the
June?
Second Saturday, and so this year it'll be June 8th.
June 8th.
The Summer Party, and more about that to come. We usually make announcements and send out invitations in the spring.
So this is your one chance a year to get a lot of people on property and milling about in usually beautiful weather. There's an art auction.
I want to knock on wood, but there's no wood around. Yeah.
There's an art auction. There's a beautiful lunch. They have a great bar set up.
Yes.
People are just having a great time. And then there's usually some kind of special entertainment.
Right.
You've had interpretive dance. You've had a high wire act. Do you know what's coming this year?
Well, it's too early to say.
Okay.
But my understanding is all of this is modeled on the inspiration of the 1967 event that Johnson and his partner David Whitney hosted with Merce Cunningham and the Velvet Underground. They had lots of people picnicking across the site. So that kind of party mixed with arts and performance together is the key concept that we're following for inspiration.
And you can get on the Glass House's mailing list at theglasshouse.org, so you'll be notified when this and other events will take place. And you can also see all of Philip Johnson's houses, including this one, at usmodernist.org/pjohnson. What's been the most interesting challenge for you now as director to come on the campus, and what do you want to work on next personally?
Personally, I'm focused on two priorities. One is expansion of arts education, working with local school districts. We do have some classes that come and visit, but I think it's limited at this time. I'd like to see that expand. I think that benefits both the Glass House and the community around it. The other is figuring out what is our next capital project, our restoration, which I'm looking at the pavilion down on the pond, which really needs a great amount of work and is a key visual part of the whole site. And so that is something that I'm working on the planning for.
Now, the whole property is about 50 acres, roughly?
Yeah, 49 acres.
49 acres. And historically, the town and the neighbors have not always been super friendly towards this and limit access to the site. Is there any progress in trying to get them to relax a little bit and let you do more things on this 50 acres?
Well, I don't find that the neighbors are unfriendly to us. I think that everyone has concerns about traffic flow and parking and things like that, which I think is understandable. We're under an agreement with them on visitorship, and so at this point, working within the guidelines that are already set up, we've been successful. I'd like to work where we meet the maximum of tours and people, which we're not at this moment.
Okay.
So, we're working towards that. And until we got to that and felt those restrictions, I think that we wouldn't press to change that. So I think that at this time, the focus is on improving the relationship with all of our neighbors and with the town of New Canaan, making that connection, getting to know them. I mean, I'm new. I've only been there for 5 months, and so making good relations with everyone is my priority, not coming in directly, launching into changing things.
Right. A very fun way to visit the Glass House is to take the train up from New York City, where you'll go into this end-of-the-line New Canaan train station, very quaint, looks like 100 years ago, and then your visitor center's right across the street.
It is, and we have both. You can come in and start your tour from there. You can also visit our shop, which has a lot of items related to the Glass House, but also just to modernism and books related to modernism and different architects and architectural styles.
It's really a fascinating time, and I love coming there every year. Thank you so much for talking with me, Kirsten.
You're welcome. Thank you.
That was George with Kirsten Roech. Marina Coates has a degree in architecture, a passion for classic television, an obsession for set design, and a talent for 3D graphics. She began doing freelance design rendering in 2012 and founded Mockingbird Lane Design in 2018. In her YouTube series Behind the Scenes, she creates and presents tours of classic TV and movie homes. She is also the creator of the series Cinematically Inspired Design, which dissects the design secrets of Hollywood to apply to real houses. Here's George poolside with Marina Coates.
Marina, before we start talking about homes, I want to find out about your husband, who I understand pranked you with cougar sounds at some point. What was that all about?
Okay, so one of our favorite things to do is prank each other, especially on April Fools. And we lived in cougar country at the time.
Where was this?
It was in the mountains of Utah.
Okay.
Big
cougar country.
Yeah, so it's the middle of the night. And he comes in and he goes, "Do you hear that?" It's like 3 a.m. And I'm so out of it, I don't realize he has a jacket on. And I said, "What?" And he goes, "I think there's a cougar out there on the door from our bedroom that led to the patio. And it's slightly ajar." And he goes over and pretends he's going to open the door and see what's out there. And I said, "No, are you crazy?" And he had done a recording and left it out there in the middle of the night. It was playing. So that was probably the best one. He got me good.
Now, did you get him back?
We always get each other back. I've done a lot of things to him.
So what's the best thing you've done back to him?
Probably when I wrote on the back of his car, "Honk and wave for April Fool's Day" or something like that. And he's on the freeway and people are honking.
Honking all the time?
Yeah, but I do pranks for him.
Oh.
And my favorite one I did for him was, because I love to do Photoshop pranks. And he had a friend at work that was from Britain and was going off for a whole week to spend in Britain. So while he was gone, my husband got his family photo on his desk, brought it home for me to mess with. And all I did, because I wanted it to be subtle enough that he just wouldn't be sure, I made all of their eyes just 1.5 times their size, I think.
Oh, yeah.
And then he put it back in the frame and put it in his office and just waited. And the guy, when he got back, he goes, "Come here," to one of the secretaries. And she came in and she goes, "What?" And she goes, "Do they look funny to you?" And he shows her the frame. And she goes, "No, they're beautiful." Talking about his children, right?
Yeah.
And anyway, then he found out. And yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one. You are the founder of Mockingbird Lane Design, and I am enough of a nerd to know some of that cultural significance. Wasn't it from the Munsters?
It sure was, yes.
They lived at 1313 Mockingbird Lane?
They did.
I should not know this, but I do.
I know that too from when it originally aired.
Yeah.
But also, I picked Mockingbird Lane because I'm doing mock-ups of houses, so I thought it was this great connection of two things. People that love old TV shows would recognize it, and then that I'm doing mock-ups.
And of particular interest are the TV shows of different genres. I mean, Munsters was kind of a spoof show, but the family shows all had a home somewhere, right?
That we got to know intimately, yes.
So what's the earliest family show that you've researched so far?
Oh, so I've gone back before my time. I did I Love Lucy, her New York apartment, and her country home.
Oh, that's right. She had that country home for a while.
Love that country home. So I think that might be the only ones from the 50s. Nothing, but I've done movies from the 50s. So Christmas in Connecticut, actually, that might be 40s. White Christmas, A Star is Born.
Yes, of
with
course.
Judy Garland.
North by Northwest
Yes,
House.
I did that
Very
one.
famous. I loved that one.
The one by Mount Rushmore, yep.
I couldn't quite tell from the movie, was it on top of Mount Rushmore or to the side? And it's not a real house.
Right.
But
People
where was
thought
it
it
supposed
was.
to be?
That is a good question. And when I was doing it and researched it, I probably could tell you exactly. But I know that it wasn't right on Mount Rushmore. But we remember it because, of course, they do the famous climb of Mount Rushmore. Yeah.
That is so cool. What got you interested in bringing life to these TV houses?
Oh, I've always loved TV homes. That's what I keyed into, even as a kid. And I did real work, architecture work. And then one day, because I freelanced, I had extra time, and because you do when you're freelancing. And I thought, I just want to do something fun today. And my husband and I were thinking of downsizing, and I thought the perfect home would be the Petrie home from Dick Van Dyke.
Dick Van Dyke Show.
Yep.
From New Rochelle, New York.
Yes. And I wanted to walk down that back hallway you never get to walk down. And so I built it because I thought, well, now I know how I can do this. And then I was just hooked, and I just kept doing it for fun until my daughter said other people would probably want to see these.
Yeah.
So she talked me into making a website, and then I made a YouTube channel later of tours of them.
Of tours of them. Mm-hmm. With the Dick Van Dyke House, we typically see the living room where the people are coming on stage from the back, and there's sort of a kitchen implied right off to the side.
Yeah.
So how do you capture these? Is it a floor plan or a rendering, or how does it work?
So I start with a floor plan, and I do that by, I have two computers at home, and on one of them I'm drawing it up, and on the other one I have it muted. I'm watching the show, but every angle of every room so that I know the dimensions approximately, which is a whole other thing of how to do that. But then I pull up the walls, but I have to add the fourth wall. And for those who don't know, the fourth wall in theater means the wall that you never get to see because the audience and the cameras are there, so it doesn't exist.
Into it, right.
Yes. So I add that and the ceilings, which aren't in a real studio set, so that it feels like a real home as we walk through it.
Are these renderings black and white? Are they in color? Are they like Matterport where you can 3D through it? I mean, how does it work, and how do you translate them to YouTube?
It starts with a regular drawing, like you're doing a construction document, and that's in the first software called SketchUp Pro. And when I'm done, it just looks like a cartoon, but I am able to pull up the walls in there. And then I bring it over into something called Lumion, and that allows you to render it, and that's what makes it look like real life. And then you add lighting, and you take the cameras through, so you're walking through, and it looks like you're walking through a real home at that point.
What's the difference between rendering a home that actual humans have been in versus homes that are animated, like the Flintstones or the Jetsons?
Oh, good question. So I've only done one, and that's the Jetsons. That's the only cartoon home I've done, and don't even have it up yet. But I think what's hard for me when I do a cartoon home is making it look like a real home because it was a cartoon. So when I'm done, it's going to still look cartoonish, whereas when I do a real home, it's going to look like a real home when I'm done. Okay. So it's like this weird in-between thing of a cartoon home, but in 3D.
Yeah.
A new foray.
And I was wondering, how do you do some of the special features? Like in the Jetsons home, they had that treadmill kind of thing outdoors where the dog and Rosie and the whole family run on it at the opening sequence.
Yeah, so I've only barely started it, but I want to add that later. And my software will do that, but it's limited, so we'll see how it turns out when I have that. Yeah.
What are some of your favorite houses that actual humans walked around?
TV set?
Yeah, TV sets.
Oh, or movie?
Yeah.
So TV set. Well, the first one I did was the Dick Van Dyke Show. So that's one of my absolute favorites. But Bewitched. Bewitched is my most popular one.
Really?
Yeah, so it has over 600,000 views. And Leave It to Beaver is the second most popular. But I only do ones I love, so it's hard to say which one I love the most.
You know, the little girl from Bewitched is still around.
Yes.
Just in her late 50s.
Yeah.
Erin Murphy.
Yes, and she has quite a presence on social media.
Yeah, she does.
Yeah. My favorite movie home I can tell you of all time is The Parent Trap, the 60s one with Haley Mills.
Haley Mills.
The Ranch House. That's my favorite one I've done.
I don't remember that one. I saw it when it came out, but I don't remember it at all.
It's Spanish colonial revival. It's just yummy.
Now, you know, the falling water of these houses, apparently, is the Brady Bunch house, right? I mean, that's the one that so many people know and
Yes.
reflect with mid-century culture.
Yes. In fact, when HGTV did that home, they said that it was the second most visited home in the United States after the White House. So at least we know it has a lot of traffic, people going to see it.
Yeah, driving by.
Yeah.
My understanding is with that is that that particular house was always just the external shots. I guess the front and backyard. Everything else was a soundstage somewhere in L.A.
Correct.
And HGTV bought that house and a couple of adjacent houses, too,
Yes.
and then brought in the Bradys and a construction crew and tried to force this house to look on the inside like it did in TV.
Yeah, it was a Christmas miracle. Like they shouldn't have been able to do that. I didn't think they would be able to. The person behind that, the one that was in charge of figuring that out, his name is Dylan Eastman, and he was the design build manager who had to come up with just incredible things and work within the city codes too. It couldn't be higher than so many feet, so they had to go down. Just a lot of magic tricks to make that happen. And I got to tour it.
Yeah?
Yeah. So, and maybe you have too, but they did an incredible
No, I
job.
haven't toured it yet. I want to.
Yeah, just incredible what they did inside. I know someone else has bought it now, so it can't be toured now. But
You know, the iconic scene is of all those Brady kids on the stairwell
yeah,
with that, it wasn't quite Mondrian, but that little
Right.
image
nod
behind.
to Mondrian. Yes.
Yeah, nod to Mondrian behind them.
Yeah, definitely. That staircase, probably the most famous staircase, right, on TV. Yeah, with all the kids standing on it.
And the Partridge Family had a house which wasn't that remarkable, but there were a lot of scenes shot in it.
Yes, and I'm going to do that one someday too. And they had a Mondrian bus.
A Mondrian bus,
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
That's been repeated quite a few times. People,
Yeah.
I've seen like party bus companies. There's
Yeah.
always a Partridge Family sort of style bus
Yes.
going around.
And if you can picture Green Acres, which I'm doing really soon, that'll be coming out
Okay.
soon. When they show them in their New York apartment, you see a Mondrian on the wall. I'm assuming it was
Oh.
supposed to be an original, right? And then
Yeah.
they bring it to their old broken down farmhouse
Oh,
too.
God, Green Acres. I've not thought about that in years.
So when I do that house, I'm going to do it how we saw it on TV, but what I can't wait to do is fix it up and make it look nice, not use the Monroe brothers, right?
Yeah.
Fix it up, and they always had all their furnishings from their New York apartment in there, but of course it just looked horrible in that house, and I want to see what it would look like if it was just a normal home with all those things in it. I'm curious. I think it could be cool.
I think it could be very cool. So I have to ask, did you do the Munsters house at Mockingbird Lane?
Oh, yes, I did. Yep. It's a two-parter. So there's the main floor, and then I did the upstairs and Grandpa's dungeon, too.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and there's some surprises down there.
I bet.
You can probably guess what comes out of the stairs, and yeah, just think of the show.
And from that show, Butch Patrick is still around.
Yes. So back when I did that show, I didn't even think of interviewing, same with Bewitched,
Yeah.
of interviewing cast members. I wish I had. Maybe if I redo them sometime, I'll see if I can get interviews with them, but I thought of that later on.
Yeah, I think Erin Murphy and Butch Patrick both do some of the conference circuit where
Yes.
they'll have celebrities in booths and you can go get your picture taken with them or get an autograph or something else like that.
Yeah.
Or they might be on Cameo, that service to where you can do this through the internet
Oh, yeah.
as a way of reaching them out as well. So there you go. There are a
I
couple
want
people.
to. Yeah, they would be
talk to.
great to interview. I'd love that.
What's on the boards now? What are you working on?
Right now, Seinfeld.
Okay.
And then
Yes.
Yeah, and then I'm going to do Green Acres after that. But I always go kind of by whim. It's whatever I'm in the mood for. But right now, that's what I'm thinking I'll do is Green Acres right after Seinfeld.
I know when I was in New York during the pandemic, they opened up the Friends exhibition, which was a full-scale mock-up of Joey's apartment, and it was the girls' apartment across the hall. You had the fountain. They had recreated the fountain. They had the sofa on the stairwell where they're all yelling pivot at each other,
yes.
right? And then the bridal chapel. I mean, it was 2 floors of a building that they had, and it was like a museum. It was like the Friends Museum. And so when I knew you were going to come on the show, I was thinking about that. That would be a natural for what you're doing.
How many years ago was that? I would have loved to have seen that.
That was just like 3 years ago. And I think the Friends, they call it the Friends Experience, is traveling. So it may be going from city to city because it was packed when I went there during the pandemic.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Oh, I would love to see that. I know I've been in New York someplace where they just have the little cafe they always meet at. That's it, but with the sofa.
This was the whole deal.
Would love that.
This was the whole deal. So how do people respond to these? What do people write you and make suggestions or?
Yeah, they're always making suggestions, and people that are really into it. So if they're a diehard fan of the show, they'll notice little mistakes. You know, you have the toaster in the wrong place or whatever. I've gotten even the wall oven was slightly more recessed, you know, things like that. So people can really get into these, and I guess I'm not alone.
You are not alone.
Yeah.
I've seen all the people that are looking at this.
Yeah.
What about the production designers? Have you met any of those yet that worked on these originally?
Well, I interviewed Bill Brzezinski, but it was for something else. It was for a movie he'd done, Aquaman. But he was working on it at the time. That wasn't what the interview was about. But he did The Nanny, which I want to do someday. So I asked him questions about it, which I'll use when I do The Nanny. And I've done John Muto, who did Home Alone, which was, that was fabulous. So he had pictures he let me see and use that were the set in production in the high school gym, just every room, all the walls of the rooms. That was incredible. No, most of them, if we're being honest, have passed away because these are really old shows, most of them.
The house I would love to see recreated is from 2006.
Okay.
It was Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves' reunion movie called The Lake House.
Oh, yes. Oh, I do want to do that one. Love that house.
We did a whole show about that with the production designer, Nathan Crawley, and Troy Osmond, who was in charge of construction, and the whole team that put it together. If you haven't heard this show, I'll just tell you briefly. The Lake House was a movie about a magic mailbox that would send letters 2 years back and forth in time between this couple that figure out they fall in love and bond around this house. The house was built in a nature preserve by special permission, and part of the condition of building in the nature preserve, and it was built out in the water, was that when the movie was over, they had to take it down, which was just tragic.
Sad.
Sandra Bullock commented at the time that she just wished she could take the house with her because it was steel and glass and incredibly visually stunning as it was supposed to be. And it really stole the whole movie.
Oh, yes. Everybody knows that home. So I've wanted to do this before, and I did a little research on it. By that, I just mean taking screen grabs of the show. That's all the further I've gotten with that one. But we hardly get to see very much of that house. So that's why I want to do it, so we can walk through the parts. The production designers spend so much time to make these incredible sets, and then we just see a snippet of it sometimes, or there's actors in the way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be glad to put you in touch with those people.
I would love
if you want to know, because they also have a huge place in their heart for this house.
Well, maybe I'll put that up my list then.
Yeah.
Yes, I would love that.
How can people find all of this on the internet?
Well, I have a website called mockingbirdlane.design.
Okay.
But I also have a YouTube channel, and that is Mockingbird Lane Design. Or you can find it through my name also on YouTube, Marina Coates.
Okay.
Either way.
All right. Thank you so much for stopping by.
Sure.
Nice
Thanks
talking
for having
with
me.
you.
Yes, thanks.
Andrea Carter does it all. She's an accomplished composer, a thrilling vocalist, and she plays guitar and drums for at least 3 jazz groups. Their musical styles include standards, blues, pop, and folk. Her trio, Andrea's Fault, has been together for more than 20 years, and it's a favorite at festivals, wineries, and restaurants on the Northern California coast. Cuts from her last album, Love Slipped Out the Door, will sneak up on your Pandora feed and boom, you're hooked. Then you can feed that addiction by shopping for the CD on her website, AndreaJazz.com. And she's here. Welcome to the show, Andrea.
Thank you so very much. I'm thrilled to be on it.
Andrea, how did you go from textbook publishing to music, or was it vice versa?
You know, it was always music. However, I am also quite shy, so I delayed my musical career till I couldn't stand not being out there with my music. But that took about 43 years of getting my courage up.
So you were a late bloomer here.
I was a late bloomer, but I was in love with me. I wrote my first song when I was about 4 years old.
Oh.
So I've always loved music.
So what's the secret to breaking the heebie-jeebies that kept you from performing in front of people?
I think I just finally had to do it. I forced myself to an open mic night. Mm-hmm. And believe me, I was so scared, but I felt like I just finally had to share myself. For me, what I learned was when you rise up to a challenge, you're rewarded. My whole life opened up as a result of going to open mic night. Within a few months, we had a band. We were starting to do concerts. You know, all my dreams came true musically once I pushed myself through that barrier.
Wow. That's a big step.
And as you'll soon hear, the songs Andrea writes sound so distinctive, you might think they were 1940s standards from the American Songbook. Here she is with Crazy About You.
Crazy about you, don't ask me why. Couldn't tell you if I tried. It doesn't make sense to love you, but yet I can't get you off of my mind. Crazy about you, wish it weren't so, but my heart just won't let go. Logic and reason says I should be leaving, but I just can't walk out that door. Why should I try? It's of no use, though I should know better than this. But I can't hide my heart from the truth. What I want most is your kiss. Crazy about you, strange as it may seem, that you'd be the man of my dreams. Never would have thought it, you know I surely fought it, but love never turns out like you think. should I try? It's of no use, though I should know better than this. But I can't hide my heart from the truth. What I want most is your kiss. Crazy about you, strange as it may seem, that you'd be the man of my dreams. Never would have thought it. You know I surely fought it, but love never turns out like you think. Love never turns out like you think.
You know, if I'd heard you at open mic night, I would have signed you immediately to my label.
You have to get yourself a label first.
Well, you should have heard me at open mic night. I was shaking like a leaf. My voice was quivering. It took 5 years of performing for me to start relaxing when I was on stage and being present. It was a long haul.
Yeah, well, your voice in that song is a relaxed, confident voice that really works. You really wrap yourself around a piece of music.
Oh, well, thank you so very much.
When did you write that, Andrea?
Most of the songs on that CD were written around when I was in my mid-40s. I should have called the CD my midlife crisis because life was changing for me rapidly. And that song was one of the first ones that I wrote when everything was changing.
So why is the band called Andrea's Fault?
Did you do something, Andrea?
Well, I live on the Monterey Peninsula.
Okay.
And, California is famous for our earthquakes. And when we were invited to do our first concert, we didn't have a name for the band. We didn't even know if we'd stay together. And that was 30 years ago. And one of the people at that time in the band, his wife came up with the name. It was a play on the San Andreas Fault.
Oh,
so
right.
It was actually Andrea's fault. And she came up with it. We all laughed. And we thought, okay, we'll use that for the first concert. And here we are, 30 years later.
Did anybody say that your sound was seismic?
Oh, good, Tom. That's a good one.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a good one.
I was going to say it gave me the tremors, but that's a different story altogether.
Right.
Andrea, during COVID, I understand you had a unusual gig with your partner, Darren Mitchell.
Oh, doing sidewalk serenades, that one?
At an assisted living facility.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was performing at this assisted living facility for a few years prior to COVID. And then when COVID hit and we all sheltered in place, they still wanted music for the residents. So we were asked to perform outside the window while they ate lunch inside. Oh,
that's great.
I brought Darren along with me. Darren is one of my partner, and he's also in both bands that I'm with. So we sang for a year. We sang outside their window.
For a year?
Yeah.
Wow.
Actually, now that everything's back up and running, I've continued to perform there. Now I'm there twice a week at lunchtime for them.
Do they at least tip?
How are they going to do that, Tom? Through the window?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Through the window. No, now I'm inside. It's actually lovely. We are inside together now.
This next song has Marshall Otwell on vibes. He was the arranger for the legendary Carmen McRae. Here's Andrea with a song she also wrote, Love Slipped Out the Door.
Like a cat on tippy toes, turn your back, there it goes. Where, oh, why no one knows, love slipped out the door. No bells or whistles or fanfare. Hardly noticed, wasn't there. Hardly noticed till it was clear. Love slipped out the door. When love begins, it's butterflies and starry eyes and not a care. But when love fades, it whispers away like perfume in thin air. The threads so slowly come undone, you hardly notice till it's gone. The door is shut, the blinds are drawn. Love slipped out the door. Butterflies and starry eyes and not a care. But when it fades, it whispers away like perfume in thin air. The threads so slowly come undone, hardly notice till it's gone. The door is shut, the blinds are drawn. Love slipped out the door. Love slipped out the door. Love slipped out the door.
Wow, that is incredibly beautiful, Andrea.
Thank you. You know, it's one of my absolute favorite songs that I've ever written. Marshall Otwell did an amazing job with it.
Yeah, he's basically the lead all the way through.
Yeah.
Which is not all that common, but lovely.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, where can people find you regularly? Do you have some regular performance spaces other than the assisted living facility?
Thankfully, yes. Luckily, I've been performing at the Cypress Inn, which is Doris Day's hotel. I've been there for about 11 years now, performing every single Sunday morning.
Where is that?
That's downtown Carmel.
Okay.
And it's a wonderful, iconic hotel that she has owned. It's dog friendly. We sing out on the patio Sunday mornings and people bring their pets and it's quite fun. That's my regular weekly. And then I play at a lot of the various hotels around town every month. Like I just started performing at the Pebble Beach Lodge, some of the big hotels like Bernardus and the Hyatt. So I get around. I do enough.
Well, if you want to buy the CD with those beautiful songs we just played, you can go to AndreaJazz.com. Thanks for joining us, Andrea.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Thank you so much. I'm honored to be on your show. I really am. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Want to go with us to Modernism Week in February 2025 and stay with the U.S. Modernist crew at our compound, aka the Hotel Skylark? Email me at george@usmodernist.org. Okay, Tom, it's all yours.
Visit usmodernist.org's massive archives to listen to past shows, discover documentation of 20,500 significant modernist houses, and access 4.3 million pages of classic 20th century architecture magazines. U.S. Modernist Radio is produced by Soundtracks Recording Studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. Our theme song was performed by George Smart and Robinson Earl, with Kelly Policelli on guest research. U.S. Modernist Radio is a production of Modernist Archive Incorporated, a nonprofit educational archive for the documentation, preservation, and promotion of modernist residential design. I'm Tom Guild. George and I'll be back soon with another Organizing Your Day Around the Most Important Hour, the 5 to 6 p.m. Happy Hour Palm Springs edition of U.S. Modernist Radio.